My name is Terry O'Brien, and I am a high school teacher at Betsy Lane High School. I teach 12th grade language arts. My family and I, we grew up poor. We didn't have a whole lot, and my mom and dad had 5 kids. Honestly, I think that instilled a lot in us, because I'm not just the only one that tries hard at things that they do. But interesting enough, though, I've never been alone, because I have an identical twin brother. We were just born a minute apart, and it's a story that we always remember, because we were born extremely premature. And when we were born, they told my mom and dad that my brother and I, we had a hold of each other, and that if they let her try to have us naturally, that it would kill both of us and possibly my mom as well. So they said, but if we do a C-section, we can promise, that the mother would live and we could at least save one baby. So my dad went in there, and the only person in there with him was my mama, his mother. And they started the C-section. They got the first baby out, which was me, and they saw that I was fine. And when they got the second one out, all the doctors all of a sudden came around the baby, which was my brother. And my dad's a minister. He stood up to his feet and he cried as loud as he could, and he said, "God, let my baby live." The lady that was doing the delivery heard him, and she turned her head like this, and she looked up at my dad, and she went, my brother started breathing. So I think it's a lot of people go through life hoping to find a best friend, and I like the fact that I got to be born with mine. Tragedy struck us again once we were 14. It was on August the 11th, 1996. My brother worked at McDonald's in Painesville. So we went and picked him up, and we was on our way home, and it was my mom, my dad, my twin brother and I, my older brother and my sister. And all of a sudden, a lady that was drunk passed out behind the wheel, and she come across the road and hit us head on. And she was going 115 miles an hour when she hit us. And she was in a little 2-door car. We was in a big giant 1978 Ford van. And that's when everything was basically made out of metal. You didn't have a lot of fiberglass and stuff. The lady hit us so hard that she put the engine inside the van with us, tore the body completely off the van. My mom was basically sitting on top of the woman that hit us when it was all said and done. It like to kill us. When it happened, I didn't hear it. I had kind of dozed off on the way home. All of a sudden I heard my mom scream, and that's what woke me up. And she said, "Oh God, honey," and I turned my head and saw bright lights, the headlights, the lady, and everything went black. A few minutes later I started to wake up. And I was in the van, but I was completely folded over in a chair. And I noticed that I was completely numb from the chest down. And I remember taking my head and just doing this and looking up, and I saw my dad behind me. Blood, his face just cut all to pieces, and he says, "Bubby, are you okay?" And I said, "Well, Dad, I'm not hurting nowhere." And he said, "Well, try to get up." And I tried, and I remember the thought I had in my head was like my legs felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds apiece. And I said, "Daddy, I can't move." And what had happened is, in the process of the wreck, somehow it crushed my spine, and it paralyzed me completely from the chest down. And I've been that way now for over 25 years. And when I think about what happened to me, it doesn't bother me. It's when I think about what happened to my family, and knowing I couldn't do anything to help them. I remember seeing my twin brother down at my feet, and I reached up and I grabbed a hold of his foot, because for some reason I had this thought in my head that even if I can't get out, maybe I can pull on him and help him get out. And I didn't know that it had broken his knee. So he screamed and he said, "Bubby, don't pull on me." So even though I was 14 and all that was going on in my memories, it's kind of bits and pieces of that night. I already knew how to pray, and I remember when I went back out one time, I was praying. I didn't know how bad everything was. My mom's leg was driven through the floorboard of our van into the engine of that woman's car. It broke every bone from her hip to her feet, every single bone. My older brother, it threw him head first into the steel beam where the sliding door connected on the van. And when he came to, his jaw was shattered, his nose was shattered, his forehead was split open, And he raised up and he opened his mouth to say mom, and when he did, his entire top set and bottom set teeth fell out in his hand like false teeth. My dad had 3 broken ribs, glass all in his face, had a concussion. My twin brother, it split his ankle open, laid the skin off of his ankle. Whatever cut him, it cut plumb through the tennis shoe, the sock and everything. Broke his knee. My sister, it threw her head first into the engine of the van, so she had like blood clots to her brain and everything all at the same time. And somehow we still survived. Every one of us lived through it. The lady, she didn't. And I remember being in the hospital and I was crying in my room. The lady walked past my room and she heard me crying. And she said, Terry, what's wrong? And I looked at her and I said, why did that woman have to die? In all these years, not the first time have I ever had any kind of a hard feeling toward that lady that hit us. I'm not the kind of person to go around and blame and say, why did this happen to me? I still, after all these years, I still live with the hope and the faith that one day I will walk again. When I was in the ICU unit at Cabell Huntington, I was in there for 2 weeks in ICU. And they kept me knocked out a lot at first because the swelling was so bad from all the shattered bones in my back that they couldn't even do the surgery for a week. So I was strapped to a bed, completely strapped head to toe, because they did not want me moving to cause any more damage for about 5 days. I remember after I finally had the surgery, I was still in ICU. I was in there by myself. And I know for myself that that's the one time that I can say for sure, the first time I know that God had ever spoke to my heart. And he told me that it's not what you lose in life that matters. It's what you do with what you have left. And I knew, and I've known since then, I have never allowed anything to stop me. I loved basketball before the wreck. I still play it. I can't jump, I can't run, I can't dribble between my legs. But I found out that if I could still put the basketball in the basket, it still counted. I've been married for 10 years. Wonderful woman named Courtney. And there's not a day in our lives that she treats me like I'm anything less than perfect to her at all. Even with the health issues I've had over the past 2 to 3 years, the older I'm getting, I'm 40 now. My twin brother and I are still very close. And we stayed close, you know, even after all that happened. We lived literally just down the road from each other. And the doctors had talked to me before the surgery. And they said there's a chance that you may come out of this without the ability to move your arms, because if we make a mistake, then the paralysis can be higher. And I remember when I was starting to come to out of anesthesia, that they took me out of the elevator and they were rolling me past where the waiting room was. And I remember turning my head over like this and looking at my family, and I raised both my hands up so they could see I could still use my arms. Has it been hard? Yeah, it's been very hard. I've come up against a lot of people that through the years that felt like that I was below par because of the things that I couldn't do. When if I look at all the things that I've accomplished because I refuse to let it keep me down, the stack is higher than theirs because they didn't have the obstacles I had. When I first started teaching, I was nervous because there's not another person in this building that's in a wheelchair right now. Not a one. Student, staff, I'm the only one. How are they going to perceive me? And then it kind of come to me like, they will perceive me the way I perceive me. So I can't come acting like that I am less. I have to come to act like that I'm equal. And when I done that, the wheelchair became a tool. Like, if I'm in the middle of a gym in a pep rally and I pop a wheelie, they go crazy. But the thing is that when they see me in the hallway, they don't see a wheelchair, they see Mr. O'Brien. It's just me. And that's what I want them to see. The essence of who a person is doesn't lie in what's out here. It lies in what's in here. This out here gets old. I don't care how great a shape you're in, this out here fails you one day. One day, if time persists long enough, death is the great equalizer, and everything on the outside will fail everyone else. But what's inside your heart is what makes you alive, not your body. Because of the fact that I'm paralyzed so high, like all the way in the chest, like I have no ability to use abdominal muscles, obliques, lower backs, or anything to hold balance. So if you even notice the way I'm sitting, I'm leaning to one side. I'm always using an arm or something to hold myself up. If I got to pick up something in the floor, I got to grab the chair and hold it and pull myself back up. I got to drive with hand controls. I got to load my wheelchair wherever I go. If I go out in town and let's say I'm going into a store and the only ramp is like 100 feet that way, I've got to pop a wheelie to get up over a curb. I can't reach high things obviously, but there's a lot of obstacles. The fact of not having the best of sensation, and it's not that everything in the body doesn't still work. It's just where the spinal cord is crushed, the brain doesn't have the ability to control it. So because of that, I even have issues with legs spasms, jerking from time to time, because the reflex arc that's in your body that allows your mind to tell what a certain touch is, whether it's good or bad, is not there to judge it. So the legs and the muscles can tense and everything ever so often. But honestly, it's just the overall physicality of it. My arms is everything. So if I pull a muscle in my shoulder or in my neck or my upper back and stuff like that, it takes a long time to heal because I cannot let it rest. I have no choice. There was many times that I came to school working in pain in my shoulder and stuff because I don't like taking pain medication. I do not see a doctor for pain medication. I don't. But I still keep doing it. And people are like, how come you don't get a motorized wheelchair? And there's a story behind that. When I was at Cardinal Hill, it was before Christmas of '96, before I got to come home for good. And they decided that they was going to take the spinal cord injury unit, take them all out to a Christmas breakfast at Denny's. First and only time I ever ate at a Denny's. Well, anyway, the guy that was in the room next to mine was paralyzed from the neck down and all the way up to here. I mean, he could barely turn his head. The nurses got him ready, but I was able to dress myself and get myself ready. So I got ready and I rolled out of my room, and it turns out they'd already got him ready and had him sitting in the hallway. And all I done was roll out into the hallway in my wheelchair, and he looked at me and he said, "Terry, you have no idea what I would give if I could just push a wheelchair like you can." And when he told me that, and it put things into perspective, I made a promise to myself that day that as long as I had the ability to use my arms to push my own wheelchair, that I will do it no matter what, out of respect for those who can't. And yeah, I have all these obstacles, but I think about the people that have more obstacles. I think about the people that are paralyzed much worse than I, that don't even know what it's like to get to hold their baby anymore, or get to hug their husband or their wife, and get to do those things with them. I think about all the things they don't have, and it makes me look at my situation and realize that I'm actually blessed. So yeah, the obstacles are physical, but the reward for what it gives me inside is well worth it. Like, I'm telling you God's honest truth, if the good Lord were to heal me and let me walk again only 5 minutes before I die, I'll still look back on all these years and say that it's been worth it. And sometimes you're hanging by a thread, but you got to realize that it really, in effect, it's God hanging on to you.
Yeah, Mr. O'Brien, he's a great asset here at Betsy Lane High School. He is a good friend of mine, and he is a professional all the time. The students all seem to have a great relationship with him, and he will step in anywhere and anyhow he can to help anyone.
This is my first year meeting Mr. O'Brien. I've only been in his class for a few months, and he's one of the best teachers I've ever had, and I'm not just saying this because this is on film. He's very real, whereas most teachers are kind of, you know, they have this teaching persona. I can tell that he is very much genuine about what he's talking about, and he's very passionate. I've never seen so much emotion from a teacher, and that really strikes home with me.
I've been teaching with Mr. Terry O'Brien for 3 years, and he always has an encouraging word to say to staff and students. The relationship that he has with his students is second to none. They all love him, and we recently went on a field trip, and one of the kids actually brought him lunch to bring back to him. So everybody just loves him here.
I'm a very avid musician. I'm an ordained minister as well. I have been since I've been 19. And I play the guitar, bass, banjo, piano, drums, harmonica, pretty much anything percussion. But I love basketball, always did. It was very ironic. I've always been a huge Michael Jordan fan because I watched him growing up, so I'm an avid Jordan collector. I have a huge collection at home. Getting close to 600 Jordan cards. When I write a song, and pretty much most of all songs I've ever written has been gospel, but it's people that those lyrics resonate with. So I remember I was at this church one time several years ago, and I remember I testified and I said that I'm so thankful that for the moments in my life that I felt like that I was hanging by a thread, that I still knew that God was with me and I would make it through. Well, then this one man steps up immediately after that, and he says, well, I'll have you to know that I never know what it's like to be hanging by a thread. And that kind of hurt me. So I go home and I'm sitting there thinking about all the stuff I've been through. And then all of a sudden, what do? I write a song called Hanging by a Thread. And I have got more comments and more requests for that song than any song I've ever written in my entire life. People would hear it for the first time. And next time I see them, they say, sing my song. My song became their song. Which means the relatability, the connection was there. So my inspiration for the songs is to give people the strength to make it through the things that I have, to know, because I know what God's brought me through. And I want other people to know that He can do the same for them, and that they're not alone in what they go through. And I just kind of figure that if I find these things that I have the ability to do, these hobbies that I can get into, and I can get really good at it, in a way it kind of helps hide some of the insecurities. But when people come and they think I'm extraordinary, I don't see myself as being extraordinary. I see myself as just trying to keep up with everybody else. And I think that as long as other people see me as being extraordinary, then I guess I'm doing something right. And as long as I don't see myself as extraordinary, then I don't forget where I came from. What I believe in my heart that the future holds for me is based upon what I hold for it. You know, I'm not like a believer in fate, but I am a believer in faith. And I believe whatever the future holds for me is 100% dependent upon what I want to make it. And hopefully that I'll meet other students each year that I will be able to change their lives, hopefully. So what does the future hold for me? Hopefully many more wonderful years with my wife, more wonderful years with my family, my friends, my students. Because if there's anything I've learned in life is that it is a gift. You don't know how much of it you have left. I could have died that night in that wreck and I was only 14. But here I sit 40 years, 40 years old now. And I would say that life's a gift, and I take my future one day at a time.
As I sit here in the dark, I'm feeling mighty low. Troubles hover close like a cloud, raining on my soul. Thoughts of my despair flood my mind, turning joy into dread. Many times I feel like I'm hanging by only a thread.